Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd of the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. Kat is still on the way. She's running just a little bit late, but she'll be here in a bit. And Mike, how are you doing?
I am not having a good day in the least, if you want me to be brutally honest. But I am alive and surviving, and that's all I can really be thankful for today.
Alrighty. And so Skyblaze is under the weather, so we wish them the best of health. But Tony, you're here and filling in, it seems.
Yeah, I apparently got pushed at the last moment. So, hi everyone, I'm Tony. You've probably heard me before many episodes ago.
Yes, I think the last time you were on the show, you thought you were clever asking an Ask a Geek question under a pseudonym, and I had Skyblaze drag you onto the microphone.
Yeah, more or less.
All right. Okay, well, we got a pretty fun show for you guys tonight. This week we are discussing the Disney Afternoon. It's getting on the 30th anniversary of the Disney Afternoon animation block, so we each picked a show to watch from those heady days to talk about, our memories of the shows and, whether or not they still hold up after nearly 30 years. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, we are going to launch into everyone's favorite segment, your favorite segment, my favorite segment, the Ask a Geek. And we got some questions here. So let's see here now. First question here. This one comes from Lawrence, and his question is for all of us. And his question is, what is a game that you would like to see get the Final Fantasy VII Remake treatment? So, Tony, let's start with you on this one.
Good question. I mean, we've already had the sequel to it, so we've had like Streets of Rage 4, but I've had such fond memories of just the first Streets of Rage. I would love to see something that would go a bit more in depth into sort of the world of that city. I've been sort of really hoping for something that would be a bit more fleshed out. I've not actually unfortunately had a chance to play this Streets of Rage 4, but I would love to see somebody go through and just make everything look so much crisper and cleaner with the Streets of Rage 1 remake.
Okay. Birdman, what about you?
Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger. I think it's about time, but I think part of Chrono Trigger's appeal is its art style. So one I'd like to see, probably will never happen, but I'd like to see Illusion of Gaia get remade, because I think that was a wonderful world that really wasn't explored enough, in my opinion. Plus, it was part of those 3 games that were made. I can't remember the name of the company. I know Rue from Clan of the Grey Wolf did like a video on it like a million years ago. The Terranigma, was that it or something? I don't know. But yeah, like I've always wanted to know more about the Illusion of Gaia world. I just thought it was really neat. And if I had to do a remake in the Final Fantasy VII style, I think that'd be it, because I think it'd be pretty badass.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's a deep cut. Not a lot of people remember Illusion of Gaia.
Fantastic game.
This is gonna sound kind of cheesy, but a game that I've always wanted to see get remade with modern graphics and gameplay conventions is also from the Super NES. Super Mario RPG: Legend of the Seven Stars. I just think that game and that story would be wonderful to tell with modern visuals, and I think a full-on remake of it would be awesome. So, but I don't think we're ever going to get that, because I think even Nintendo has forgotten about Mario RPG. So, and we got a question. We got a question here for Kat. Oh, it looks like she's just walking in. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm 15 minutes late with Starbucks. I wish I had Starbucks right now. That would be amazing. I haven't had Starbucks in a long time.
I don't think anyone's had Starbucks in a long time. Damn quarantine. Anyway, we got a question here for you. And this one comes from Mark, and his question is, if you could bring back one canceled or finished anime or manga for another go, which one would it be?
Oh God, it's always the which show most deserves a season 2. Oh God, I was actually talking with some friends about this the other day, and we had narrowed down our list of shows that deserve a second season that really should come back or get remade for a longer series. Get Dragon Ball Super, basically, or Full Metal Brotherhooded. And the shows that my friends and I all agreed would be the most needed to come back were Ouran High School Host Club, 100% needs another season. And about every year, I'd say, somebody spreads a rumor that it's coming, and it's not coming, guys. We're not going to get it. Tragic. The second one would be Bacano. That was a really, really phenomenal show. It really should have gotten a second season. Its sister show, Dorarara, got like 3 or 4 seasons for some reason, but Bacano did not, which is really, really tragic because the light novels have a lot more content that they could have used, but they opted not to. And the third show that we decided really needed to come back with a second season is The Devil is a Part-Timer.
Yes! Holy shit, that show's awesome.
It's so good. It was just really good. Really fun show that left a lot of questions unanswered and really should have had another season. And I believe the manga or the light novels, I'm not sure what came first or what its basis is, but I've heard that that's actually ending soon. And it would be really nice if, now that it's properly over soon, that if they could come back with another season and, like, finish what they started.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised. The answer that I thought you were going to give was not listed in there at all. I thought you were gonna say the Slayers, because I remember you being a huge stan for Slayers back in the day.
I love Slayers. It is my favorite anime of all time, but they did bring it back, and I didn't like it.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it got a couple more seasons in the late 2000s, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it because it retconned some stuff, and I'm not about that life. If they made some more story that was based very tightly on some of the light novels, and instead of retconning the same stuff they've already talked about, if they could just, go with some new villains that they've been kind of skimming over for, a couple decades, that would be great. Another thing that would be really awesome now that I'm thinking about Slayers is there was a manga of a Slayers x Sorcerer Stabber Orphan crossover, and I don't remember for sure if it got an anime, but that needs to come over. That needs to be an anime that comes over, because that's great.
Okay, alrighty. All right, and that's all the Ask the Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending your questions in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions, love reading them on the air, so go ahead and send your questions in, and you just might get yours read on the show. And so, with that, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of the show, and that is the 30th anniversary of the Disney Afternoon. At least I think we're getting, at least, well, maybe a little past the 30th anniversary. But anyway, so for those who don't know what I'm talking about, starting in, I want to say, the tail end of the 80s and well into the 90s, I want to say it was 1989, Disney started actually its first major foray into television animation, and produced this afternoon syndication block called the Disney Afternoon, which had shows like Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Gargoyles, Goof Troop, Bonkers, a whole bunch of other shows, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin. All of those were basically part of this one animation block, and it was a really big deal for kids back in the day, because this is back before the days of Cartoon Network, or even before Nickelodeon really got it big, because back then cable was fucking expensive. So this is one of the big cartoon blocks for kids after school, and a lot of those shows were very dearly loved back in the day. So we thought that it would be fun for each of us to pick a show, go back and look through it, and see, do our memories of these shows hold up? What made these shows important to us, and just kind of talk about some cartoons from when we were kids that we really enjoyed. So let's see. Let's just go around the horn here. Kat, let's start with you. I have a feeling I know which cartoon you're going to talk about, but which show did you pick to talk about out of the Disney Afternoon?
I think when we had decided on this topic, I had said that I was going to end up watching Gargoyles.
Yep, that's what I figured.
I did not end up watching Gargoyles. I have been really strapped for time and brain cells lately, and I had actually like rewatched a bit of Gargoyles a few years ago, so I kind of felt like I already had an opinion of what I, as an adult, think of Gargoyles.
Well, we did a whole show on it, as I recall.
Yeah, I think we might have. I don't remember. We've been doing this show for a long time. But anyway, so I sat there with the button on Gargoyles, and I went, screw it. I'll watch something I haven't watched in the last 20 years, and I watched Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers instead.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I loved Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers as a kid. I loved the song. Like, I still remember all the lyrics. Like, I don't know what it was, but I loved that show as a kid. As I was rewatching it, I was watching episodes that I remember. Like, I remember certain episodes that must have been on TV more often than others. So coming back as an adult and watching it going, oh Christ, this is rough to watch as an adult. This must have been great as a kid, but as an adult, it was very kid-centric. And as an adult watching it, I'm just like, wow, I don't care about anything that's happening.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I don't know what it was. It's probably just because I haven't been in the greatest of moods lately, but, sitting back and watching it, and so, first off, the best thing about the show, because it does have a lot of fine qualities, but the best thing about the show is the ingenuity of Gadget's creations. Everybody loves Gadget. We all know this. Everybody loves Gadget. She's a lot of people's first crushes. It's cool. Gadget's awesome. And watching her invent things and create things, and to have a cartoon where it's on their scale instead of a normal person scale. So when you watch Darkwing Duck or something like that, they're just people. They're normal sized people. But with Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, they are tiny animals in a big people world. And so watching them invent things and utilize human stuff for their needs, I thought was just really creative and fun. And I think that's easily the most creative and fun part of the show. My gripe with the show that just sort of made it not that interesting is that it sort of bills itself as a almost a mystery series where Chip and Dale are supposed to be these type of gumshoe characters who are supposed to be going around solving crimes. But that's not really what the show is. The show is mostly Chip and Dale getting into some sort of hijinks or trouble finds them, and then they have to go solve a problem. So, I haven't watched the show since it was on TV in the 90s. And re-listening to the opening song, which talks about them solving crime, I'm like, I didn't really take that away from the original series when I was a kid watching it. I really took it as some sort of crime-solving show, even though it's Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. And I remembered the lyrics. I never really took it as a show where they're out there solving crimes and solving mysteries and stuff like that. And that's definitely what it's trying to bill itself as, especially when you have the main characters dressed like Indiana Jones and Magnum P.I. But man, it didn't really deliver on that promise, the promise of the opening song. But it was, it was cute. It was cute. I really, really like some of the villains that they have. They're just ridiculous, and they're all voiced by the same two actors. And you know which actors they are because you've watched the cartoons.
I want to say Frank Welker and Jim Cummings.
Jim Cummings and Peter Cullen are every character.
Okay. Oh, I was close. Wait, Frank Welker was in Chip and Dale?
No.
I mean, Peter Cullen was in Chip and Dale?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, a couple of places. They actually switched off for each other at some point.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's the villain.
Fat Cat, maybe?
Yeah, Fat Cat. I think they switched off as Fat Cat for some reason. But yeah, Jim Cummings is basically every character in there who isn't one of the main 4 or 5. No, wait, who plays Zipper? Maybe.
Probably Jim Cummings.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he was Monterey Jack. Okay.
Oh man. on the topic of Monterey Jack, that accent is not good. I'm really sorry, but that accent is not good. It's just not. I love the character of Monterey Jack. Monty was always my favorite character as a kid. I don't know why, but like his accent is not the greatest. It's not the worst I've heard in a cartoon, but not great either. But like overall, like the stories, the episodic stories were just not that impressive to me. And maybe it's because I had told myself I was going to watch Gargoyles, which has a sort of like underlying thread and themes, and it was really like not the most child-friendly series of its day. So to just like sit down and watch like Squeaky Chipmunks and drag was like, whew. This is not what I wanted out of my day.
Chipmunks can do it too.
What?
If bears can do drag, chipmunks can do it too.
Yes, I mean that's fair, and I'm all for everyone doing drag if that's what they're into. But the other thing that I thought was odd was that Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers was like the first, as far as I remember, the first introduction of the extra characters like Monty and Zipper and Gadget. There had been a lot of specials with Chip 'n Dale previous to this, and they were always sort of these very
They were kind of like the like trickster characters like Bugs Bunny, but yeah, this Rescue Rangers was the first time that they had a supporting cast.
Right. So what I thought was odd, and maybe it's just the way it was released or something, but the first episodes of Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, the Rescue Rangers are already a group. They've been a group for a long time, and they already have a group dynamic. And then the start of the second season is when they actually go back and show how everyone met. And you would think that for its audience of young people, it would have been easier to lead with that.
I have to wonder if that's again, because this is 30 years ago and I don't have access to the production schedule in front of me. Well, first off, because I didn't really watch Chip 'n Dale as a kid, so a question about that episode where they show everybody meeting up: is it done in flashback or is it done like as it's happening?
It is the course of like 5 episodes.
Okay, all right. So I because DuckTales I have on DVD. And they did a similar thing with the DVD sets for DuckTales. The 5-part pilot of DuckTales is on the season 2 box set, which is really freaking weird. So I have to wonder if that was done just as they screwed up the release schedule on Disney Plus or however you watched it, or if it was actually produced that way as part of the syndication package, because most of these shows were initially produced in just a single 65-episode syndication package, and then they got additional seasons later. So I'm not sure how that works out.
This was like how they aired. So the episodes didn't 100% follow their air dates. Like they weren't in air date order, but these were much later on. So in like the TV show's season 2 is the opening of season 2 is like 5 episodes of how they all met. And I just think that's a weird place to start, because like it's not like their backstory of how the group was formed is told in like the intro or anything like you might have on like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something. So there's no explanation of if you had seen Chip 'n Dale in other things, and then you went into this show, you'd have no concept for who these characters are besides Chip 'n Dale. But it kind of feels like you're already expected to know them when you first start watching. You know, because there's no introduction of the characters. It's just like, here's a day in the life of the Rescue Rangers. Dale did something dumb. Chip did something dumb. That's like how every episode goes. And I just thought it was strange that they waited so long to introduce how the characters met and give them, like, that sort of, like, an explanation for their relationships to one another. I thought that was just a long time to wait. Like, not that it matters when you're a kid watching it, because you're probably not watching it in order, and you're probably watching reruns and stuff. But Like, as somebody who was going back and trying to remember anything at all about the show, and for the first episode you watch to drop you straight into a problem of the day story, I was like, man, I could really use some context. I don't remember anything.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, so you'd say on the whole, Chippendale has got some cobwebs on it after 30 years.
I think it's really clever in a lot of ways. I really like, especially like Fat Cat is a great villain because he's just so crazy. But there are definitely some things that, for me, did not age well. But it's mostly that this was really like meant for children. This was not like family fun that everybody can enjoy. Like, for me, it didn't quite fill that role. I didn't watch all 3 seasons, to be fair, so it might get a little bit better later on. But just watching through the first season, I wasn't really like, trying to look out for adult jokes or something that like older kids or adults might have liked at the time, and I just really didn't find it. So I thought it was just more kid-centric than maybe some of the other things we're going to talk about today. So I didn't really get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but I still think it's a good show, if that all makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Okay, and Bergman, my card here says you pick Goof Troop.
Yeah, this is a show that I watched during its initial broadcast. I was very fortunate to catch this on my local antenna, if you happen to remember those. It was always on when I got home from school. Now, I didn't get a chance to watch this during our period leading up to this. I've just had a bunch of really stupid crap happen. However, my memories of this are crystal clear because I remember having such a good time with it. However, leading up to this, I've been really kind of thinking about some of the characters, how they've been portrayed, how well does it hold up overall. And Goof Troop did something a little bit different in terms of the Disney formula. You'd always see the happy family, like you might have the annoying younger sibling, or you'd have the the super happy wife sort of thing. Goof Troop did something a little bit better something a little bit different rather in terms of how it presented its characters. It presented Goofy, voiced by Bill Farmer, as a single dad raising Max. They just moved to Spoonerville, where Goofy's old friend Pete, voiced by Jim Cummings, happens to live. And they're like, hey, we're going to be buddies again. And, obviously hilarities ensues with Max Goof, who's like 11 during the series run, voiced by Dana Hill, runs into PJ's son, Pete, voiced by Rob Paulson, which I completely forgot until today. But then I went back and kind of realized, hey, that's Raphael.
That's Pinky.
Yeah, so I was really excited to just click those two kind of memories together. And I was always happy how Goof Troop it seemed like it wanted to do something a little bit differently. And obviously because it featured Max and Pete and Pistol being PJ's 4.5-year-old little sister. And the mom, can't remember, Peg. In a variety of different situations where Peg was like a real estate agent, I think. Goofy, I forget what he did, but Max and PJ would always get into some kind of trouble or some kind of goofy adventure. But it never felt mean-spirited. It felt like the Goofy equivalent of Full House without beating you over the head with a good lesson about it. And I like how it changed the role of the family dynamic, because Disney, I felt with the Disney Afternoon, took a lot of chances with things. Like, for example, talking again about Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, taking the characters of Chip and Dale, who are ostensibly comedy characters to begin with, but putting them into a different situation, changing up that formula was different. Goofy, you wouldn't assume to be a dad, and canonically, this is his son, which implies a familial relationship, and it's never ever been addressed in Disney canon whatever happened to Max's mom or Goofy's wife, so to speak. I think it's been hinted at in interviews since that maybe she died, but that's never been officially been confirmed by anybody at Disney. The thing I really liked about this show is I really liked Peg, because Peg kept Pete on a short leash, because Pete is ostensibly a bad guy. Like, he's not like evil, but he's underhanded, he's sneaky, he wants what's best for him and his family. He will take advantage of you if he thinks he sees a way to do it. And Peg would always keep him in check. She loves him to death. That family is her wolf pack. She'll do anything she has to protect them, but she won't let Pete do anything terrible. And I just loved that relationship, because I'd never seen that played out in animation before. And because this was in the 90s too, you would always see Max and PJ doing very 90s things. Like, they would skateboard, they would do, I'm pretty sure I remember, like, rollerblading and stuff like that. And I remember this was the only Disney afternoon show truly, in my opinion, to ascend its cartoon roots, because there was talk that they wanted to do a Goof Troop special, but they're like, well, why don't we do a theatrical feature? And they decided to age Max up. And that is where I really got the appreciation for Goof Troop, because you had the character development to a certain extent from the television show, and when they aged him up to put him in high school, you traveled with these characters. However, in a Goofy movie, which I think came out in 95, 96, something like that.
I went to see that for my birthday in the cinema.
Yeah, same here. I remember seeing it in cinema. Peg was gone for some reason, and so was Pistol. And I think Pistol was voiced by Nancy Cartwright of Bart Simpson fame. So I was very confused by that, and I always thought that was a negative point to take away from Goof Troop, is that they lost the family relationship. But then again, they wanted to focus on the family that was Max and Goofy, how their closeness developed over them doing the father-son trip. But looking back on the show 30-something years later, I do see there could be some problems in maybe how the episodes are written now, from what I remember, because one of the things it does do, and this unfortunately comes back to Peg, as much as she loves her family, when she doesn't get her way, she becomes cranky, and it's not the best look, considering how modern attitudes have changed towards women and whatnot. I mean, it's nothing too damaging, but I could see it being problematic now. I don't see it going through very far through a Disney kind of pitch meeting. But one of the enduring legacies that I've noticed, and this was thanks to Gonzo, because I think he mentioned this to me, is Goofy is canon in the DuckTales universe now. There's a very quick interlude where Goofy's talking to Donald, and he shows a picture of Max and Roxanne, where they go to junior prom together. Or, yeah, I think they go to prom together, which indicates that the series continued on, because even when House of Mouse was airing, Max was working as a waiter at the club that Mickey Mouse ran. So that continuity is still there even now. That impresses the hell out of me. I'm surprised Goofy has got such long legs. I mean, do I think Goofy and the Goof Troop need to be rebooted? No, I'm happy if they're a part of the DuckTales universe and you bring them in for occasional side stories. That would be fantastic. But I don't know whether those stories need to be told. However, though, on the other side of that coin, a Disney family drama, or not drama, dramedy could be actually kind of amusing. But then again, I guess you kind of get that with like DuckTales, as you see the relationship between Scrooge and the kind of nephews evolve over the course of, 3 seasons now? So I'm looking back on my memories to agree, or to borrow a phrase that you guys used just a moment ago. The series does have some cobwebs. It is watchable. There was a list that I found online of the best Goof Troop episodes, and one of these I remember clearly because it involved the FBI. And since I'm Canadian, our closest equivalent is the RCMP. And I've always had a fascination with that. And evidently there was, I think the episode's called The Ungoofables. And there was a crime knockoff where there was Elliot Goof, who evidently was a Prohibition era agent of some type. So I thought that was kind of neat. And vocal performances from this series always stand out. Bill Farmer has been the voice of Goofy for like a million years. I think he's been voicing it since like the mid 80s to current day. While I was doing a little bit of research for this, reading about the Goofy movie specifically, they wanted at one point Jeffrey Katzenberger, who I think he's one of the guys in charge of Quibi right now, which that guy had told Bill Farmer, can you do Goofy but not do his voice? They wanted him to be in a normal speaking voice, and he recorded that for like 2 weeks before Disney execs were like, yeah, this isn't working. And it turned out a lot better as a result. I mean, Goofy is a part of my childhood, and looking back at it, I don't know. I look back at just because I didn't have a normal family kind of growing up. Like, I'm adopted and whatnot. Mom, dad. It's complicated, to say the least. But Goof Troop gave me a little bit of a different look at how a family can function, how a family can have fun. And it was a very fun part of my time. I'd come home from school every day at 4:30, and Goofy, Max, PJ, and Peg and Pistol would be there every day to greet me, and Chainsaw the dog, and Waffles the cat. So good times had by all.
So that was Goof Troop and Chippendale's Rescue Rangers. Now, Tony, you are going to talk to us today about Darkwing Duck.
Let's get dangerous. Yes, it's been a show both me and Skyblaze have had a lot of fun watching, as well as rewatching, actually. Obviously, being thrown at this last minute, I wasn't expecting to do this part, so I had to do a quick crash course back on a lot of Darkwing Duck, because it's been several months since I've last seen it. And I don't know, it's one of these shows that it just sort of gives a lot of memories of other shows themselves, and really wants me to then start chain watching a lot of other shows along itself, because obviously Darkwing Duck being effectively the Disney version of Batman is essentially what he is. Just obviously with a lot more comedy in it. Jim Cummings, again, playing the vast majority of the characters in this. Obviously the titular character, Darkwing Duck himself. It's one of these, having sort of gone back through, watched a lot of it, read up back on the characters again, reminding myself of all these bits and pieces. I just love the variety of the characters itself, the fact that it's drawing both as sort of from the DC side, the Marvel side, to make this sort of its own sort of superhero comic book world of sorts. So you've got your Electros with Megavolt, you've got terrible with names right now. Where is he gone? The Liquidator. This is basically this mutant water dog creature who just talks primarily in sort of salesman lingo.
Oh yeah, I remember him now, yeah.
As they're being effectively the Hydra Man, you've got the sort of Poison Ivy character with Bushroot, and then you've got the sort of pulling in the sort of evil doppelganger with Negaduck, again voiced by Jim Cummings, and as always being far cooler than Darkwing himself. It's going back through watching a lot of the episodes. It has a lot of, again, that sort of 90s feel, which to be expected of the animation of that period. I would still say it holds up. You've not got, I would say, a lot that dates it, probably a few references here and there. It's a lot of fun, especially obviously watching it years later from having originally watched it. Finding a lot of additional jokes and sort of puns happening that you probably would have flown straight over everybody's head when you were younger, because most jokes did when you were that young.
I think one of the things that I loved about Darkwing, as you mentioned, it like parodies a lot of like, say, Batman villains, is I love Steelbeak and how he's a ripoff of Blofeld from like James Bond, and even I think his organization is called Foul. I can't remember what it stands for, but just his delivery in that I loved Steelbeak as a like bad guy. But yeah, one of the things I've never forgotten this joke 30 years later, and I can't remember the context of it, but Darkwing was fighting a bad guy, and he had to say potato backwards, and he was yelling "Otatop" at people. And like throwing dust at them or something stupid like that. But for 30 years, I remembered Otatop.
Okay.
And just loving his little his quote. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the lash that's stuck in your eye. I am Darkwing Duck.
I mean, like it. Again, this was one of Disney's original ideas, and this is before Batman, the like animated series, I think. But it was adventuresome. It was a little more, stakes were a little bit higher than say DuckTales, and it wasn't Tailspin, which was different but aired in the same animation block. Maybe a difference of a few months, maybe a year. I don't know. And I don't know, you're right. It's fairly harmless. It's timeless in a regard. Maybe there's a few dated references here and there. And I think he was yet another character. Yeah, he was. He was yet another single father character because of Goslin. And that's that's, again, for Disney in the 90s, fairly progressive. And I think that's something that a lot of these Disney afternoon shows should be credited for, is they did something fairly progressive with a lot of their relationships, positions of power. Because you look at Tailspin with Blue and the kid, you don't find out much about their families, but you have Rebecca, I think that was her name, was the person in charge. So they put a woman in charge of who is ostensibly the main draw of the show. And again, that's Disney being fairly progressive. And I think that's really neat that Disney would do stuff like this. I'm sure there's probably some problematic elements in there somewhere. I don't know. I'm not a Disney expert. But
one thing that kind of sort of intrigues me, because I watched through like the first pilot episodes of this again, and just realizing, sort of in context, obviously you wouldn't necessarily notice it as a kid. You just sort of go on with it because of the speed it's going through. But just how dark it actually is, because of the fact that obviously that Goswin is being looked after by her granddad, who has met an unfortunate accident, aka has died. And the fact that obviously her parents aren't around, which obviously considers that they have also died. And it's like, and this is a kid's show?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how they build in the little things like that. Plus, Darkwing's color palette is majorly, or a major part of it happens at night, or they have not like Batman-esque, skylines or anything, but there is some dark backgrounds in there, and that's something for a kid show. As once again, you compare it to Chip and Dale, you compare it to Goof Troop, which is everyday slice of life sort of thing, except with, well, I guess DuckTales, I guess, but it was different. You're right. It's a little bit darker. Plus, you're fighting actual bad guys.
Well, by that time, Batman the Animated, I think by the time Darkwing came around, Batman the Animated series has been around for a couple of years and proved that you could do a serious superhero show for kids and have it do well. And so I think Darkwing was kind of designed to sort of emulate on that.
Having a quick look, I think it was Batman was 92. I think Darkwing was actually 91 on syndication.
Yeah, but because I remember Batman hit a little bit later, because Darkwing seems more modeled after the Batman of the 1960s mixed in with a little bit of maybe the Batman from the 1970s sort of thing. Because the 80s Batman got a little bit more serious, and Frank Miller's run on The Dark Knight Returns and everything. But Again, if I'm wrong, someone will scream at me on YouTube or in the comments, but that's just how I remember it. Sue me. Like, I don't know. The thought I'm finishing with is it's a show that can exist in a bubble, and I kind of like that. Like, few Disney shows can do that perfectly. Darkwing Duck, it can, other than a few technological references and maybe a few jokes here and there, it's pretty, you could show it to almost any kid now and they'd probably get it. It doesn't look as flashy as some of the new stuff. It's definitely a different animation style. The fact that it's hand-drawn and not computer-assisted. And that's something else, too. The art style for this show looked great. When they wanted Darkwing to look cool, he looked legitimately cool. Plus, his design of his costume, I loved. That gas gun of his, I wanted that toy so bad. Plus, that's another thing, too. Darkwing was one of the only shows from the Disney afternoon that got toys. There was the Thunderquacker, which goes for ridiculous money right now if you have all the pieces. There was a full range of Darkwing Duck villains. I had the original one where his hat popped off, and you can guess how quickly I lost that part. He came with the gas gun, but there was Megavolt, who is his equivalent to Electro. I think there was a Bushroot figure. I think there was Negaduck, and a bunch of other Steelbeak for sure. And I don't think there ever was a Launchpad toy, at least not officially. Obviously, the toy line is picked up again with the line of God has deemed us all heathens and given us Funko Pops. God, I hate those things.
Mike, we're kind of going on a tangent here, and we're running a little short. So
okay, well, no, I'm just saying it's one of the only shows that got a toy line, and that's something important.
Also, one other weird fact I had a quick look through. It's had probably one of the longest seasoned, first season runs that I've ever seen of a show. 65 episodes for one season.
Well,
yeah,
all the Disney afternoon episodes are like that because that's 65 episodes is how much a syndication package is, and these shows were originally, because back when the Disney afternoon first got started, the Disney Channel didn't exist. This was Disney's first major foray into television animation, so they produced the first seasons of each of these shows as a syndication package, and then sold the block out to a bunch of different networks. And then it was only later that they got additional second seasons, I say with air quotes. So, I think actually one of the notable reversals on that is actually Gargoyles, which I think got a 13 episode first season and then like a 65 episode second season or something like that. But on the whole, Tony, how well would you say Darkwing Duck holds up?
I think as me and Mike were saying, I think it's held up pretty well. I say, apart from a few odd jokes here and there that might be kind of dated, animation's still holding up pretty well. The storylines are still pretty good. The voice acting is obviously spot on. I would if I had kids, I would so happily have them watch this.
Okay. All right. So that leaves me next, and my show should probably come as no surprise to anybody. I picked the original DuckTales because I am a huge Scrooge McDuck fan. We did a whole show on the life and times of Scrooge McDuck, and I think I made it clear that the Don Rosa Scrooge McDuck comics are some of my favorite stories ever, particularly the life and times of Scrooge McDuck, which I consider to be required reading for anybody who's a Disney fan. So it was really interesting having read those as an adult and going back and watching the original DuckTales and kind of seeing how they stack up. And I remember loving DuckTales as a kid. Scrooge McDuck has always been one of my favorite characters in the Disney stable. And I gotta say that now that we've got the 2017 DuckTales series, the new one kind of feels a little bit rough. It's very clear that this was one of the first cartoons produced for the Disney afternoon block. I think it was 89 it came out. Because a lot of the plots and characters are, really kind of bare bones. I'd almost say stock. Huey, Dewey, and Louie are pretty much interchangeable. And some of the plots are very simple, and the character writing very almost one note in some places. It feels almost in some ways closer to a half hour long Looney Tunes cartoon than a story based cartoon. That said, there are some a lot of the humor does still really hold up, and there are some stories that are that I found to be still really great after all these years, like 5-part pilot, Treasure of the Golden Suns, which I thought was a great way to kick off the series. Still a little irritated that they put that on the season 2 box set instead of season 1, but what the hell do I know about marketing? One thing that I do want to give a shout out to, that I think still holds up really well, is the absolutely legendary voice acting of the DuckTales series. Of course, you got Alan Young as Scrooge, who I love David Tennant, but Alan Young will always be my Scrooge. And then you also had June Foray, who did several roles and June Foray is one of the last of the great voice actors from the golden age of animation. So to get to hear her back as Magica De Spell and a bunch of other roles was a really nice kick to the nostalgia. There are some things that, like I said, it's got some cobwebs. One of the things that I noticed was Webigail. I remember she's for a lot of the first season, she's just kind of there. They don't really do a whole lot with her. So I find that I like 2017's Webby a lot more than I like the original series. Webby doesn't really have much of a personality beyond kind of the younger sibling who wants to play with Big Brother. That's really kind of her only real role for much of the first season. She gets a little better in the second season. And then you've got Mrs. Beakley, who's kind of the fussy nanny character. Which, I mean, that works for that version of the show, but at the same time, it's also kind of a little threadbare as far as story potential. It was also great seeing some of the older stories that I would love to see redone for the 2017 series. Like one of the ones that really impressed me was actually the episode where Scrooge tells the story about how he left Scotland to pursue his fortune, and how they managed to hew pretty closely to the Carl Barks and Don Rosa stories while still taking enough liberties to make it work for animation. And it was just a really neat little I don't know. To me, it felt like a neat little bit of fan service for people who've read the comics. Like I said, the thing that really kind of the big cobweb that kind of hangs over everything is, again, how stock the characters and stories really are. It's really clear that Disney was still kind of finding its footing in telling television stories. And when you compare the OG DuckTales to, say, Darkwing Duck, which spun off of that, it's really clear that there was a lot of growth from one series to the next. So, but I still found it really enjoyable, and I was perfectly happy to sit down and watch through a bunch of episodes of the series, and I still had a pretty good time. So I guess that goes to show that sometimes archetypal characters aren't necessarily bad if you know what to do with them and how to work with them. I will say that I think the character writing is superior in the 2017 version, but the 1989 OG DuckTales still holds up really well. And yeah, the theme song still won't leave my head.
I can't say the word duct tape without going woo.
It's almost like ringing Pavlov's bell now.
Yeah.
It
doesn't have to be DuckTales. It sounds just close enough to it.
Yeah, someone says DuckTales, you just automatically go woo.
I had to stop myself the first time you said it. So
that's like the real lesson that we can all take away from all the Disney afternoon shows, is that they had the best songs with them.
Yeah, absolutely. They were all so well written.
Like, they're all good. They slap. Is that what the young people are saying these days? They all slap.
Can I tell you, watching DuckTales and thinking back on these other Disney action shows, can I tell you how great it was to hear a cartoon that had a full orchestra behind it again? Because I don't think any show has done that since, like, the 2000s.
There's probably a couple, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
But and again, Kat likes to make fun of me of this because I'm apparently the only one who notices it. But I loved how DuckTales was scored. It actually had like a full orchestra behind it, and the music really does a lot to set the mood and enhances the adventures and the antics. And I remember all the other Disney afternoon shows having similar scoring.
one of the things that I think DuckTales did really well is the quality of its animation. It never felt phoned in. That's one of the big things with a lot of the kind of Disney stuff. It always felt inventive. It felt creative. And I enjoyed it. Actually, my favorite character out of DuckTales, I would be angry when this character didn't show up, was Gizmo Duck. My God, do I love that character. And weird bit of trivia. I was on a subreddit in the last month or so, and the word, we do this thing every day called Word of the Day. And I knew this one because normally it's something weird and obscure, but blatherskite is actually a word.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I know that word from the fucking Transforming Duck. And I got really excited. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, I forgot how much of a ham Gizmo Duck was in the original series.
Yeah,
like he was the voice actor was definitely having a lot of fun with that role. Second season of DuckTales definitely a lot weaker than the first. There were a lot of stories that I really didn't like, and a lot of characters introduced I thought were kind of one note and didn't really need repeat visits, like Bubba the Cave Duck.
Oh my God!
Absolutely do not like that character. No. But I mean, on the whole, DuckTales is still a really enjoyable show, and I would say that it holds up pretty well. It's definitely something that you've got to, if you're coming into it after watching the 2017 DuckTales, you got to kind of brace yourself for, because it in terms of storytelling, it is a lot rougher. But visually, I mean, it still holds up. I think all the Disney afternoon shows hold up really well in terms of the animation. But we're kind of running a little bit over on time here, so let's just kind of just sum up our thoughts here on the Disney afternoon and our experiences with the block, and let's just kind of just start wrap things up. So, Kat, let's start with you. Kind of wrap up your thoughts on the Disney afternoon animation block.
I'd say that if you are like us and you're kind of 90s kids, if you are our generation and you grew up watching this stuff, this is a really great opportunity, because a lot of these programs have gone on and off the market in terms of being able to own them. They're not on TV anymore, and they're really hard to get a hold of, like a home release. And certainly getting like full sets of them, full seasons of them, such as they are, would just be really, really difficult. And for them to now all be on Disney Plus is really awesome. It's a really good nostalgia trip. Even if you are a little too old for the content now. Now a lot of people our age have kids or nieces and nephews or somebody that they can share this content with the next generation, which I think is really great, because otherwise I'm not sure how we would have passed these shows on. So I'd say, take a day, take like a rainy day. No one's going anywhere anyway. Take a day and just like check out some episodes and see how much you remember. But most importantly, never skip the intro, because they're all magic.
All right. Birdman.
Again, thanks to the magic of Disney Plus, you can access these shows streaming almost anywhere in the world right now. They are fantastic. Most of them hold up. I do think they are worth at least a nostalgic watch if you want to kill 15-20 minutes someday to relive a little piece of your childhood. There's merchandise available for these movies. Like I said, there's the aforementioned Funko Pops if you want to revisit that. There's also some other fan merchandise out there. It's a really fun time in animation. I'd love to see more from this era come back, especially since we saw Chip and Dale get a little cameo in DuckTales recently. Please give me a series, for the love of God.
All right, Tony.
To be honest, I've just obviously getting a feel back into the show again. I just want to spend most of my rest of my week now just rewatching it all again. It just brings back so many memories. It is something I'm so happy to find that I can get my hands on again to watch through it all. And part of me is obviously kind of a slight detraction from this, wondering if Warner Brothers at any point are going to do something similar. In terms of, not necessarily it's like a Disney Plus type thing, but in terms of like re-releasing a lot of their old stuff for us to watch again.
Well, I mean that's getting into
HBO Max territory.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I've already got 3 streaming services going. I don't think I need a 4th. So, but anyway, as for me,
if you can get it, grab it.
yeah. But as for me, like I said, I really enjoyed going back and watching the OG DuckTales again, and I have really fond memories of almost all of the Disney Afternoon block. I never liked Bonkers for some reason. I don't know. I may have to go back and give that a second shot.
No, it's terrible.
But yeah, it's definitely a nostalgia trip going back and revisiting these old shows, and it's amazing how well a lot of them hold up after 30 years. So if you're looking for a nice nostalgia trip, definitely look up some of these shows. They're definitely worth another watch. And so with that, that's all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. We will see you next week for Fools Who Ride. Thank you, Tony, for filling in. And as always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
I'm not the cat.
And I'm not the cat either.
All right, we'll see you guys later. Taka, play us out.